Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to decode some incredibly dense, meticulously handwritten biology notes. Our goal? To really understand the fascinating, literal physical architecture of epithelial tissue. I absolutely love diving into primary materials like these notes, mostly because they strip away all the extra noise and just give us the raw, biological blueprint of how our bodies are actually built. So today, we are exploring the ultimate lining of the human body, looking really closely at how its tiny, microscopic shape perfectly dictates its life-keeping functions. Let's get into it. So we're going to break this whole complex topic down into 5 structured parts today. We'll start with the blueprint and foundation, then move to the rules of construction, check out the materials catalog, look at floor tiles and blocks, and finally, we'll wrap up with pillars and sweepers. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the blueprint and foundation, or the origins of the body's lining. Now, I want you to just stop and think about this for a second. Think about the physical boundary that coats your internal organs, or the lining of your blood vessels, your respiratory tract, and even your skin. What is the unique material that's doing all of that heavy lifting? It has to be incredibly adaptable to survive in literally all of those different harsh environments, right? Well, the answer is epithelial tissue. And what's really fascinating here is that the source notes reveal just how versatile this biological blueprint actually is. See, epithelial tissue is completely unique because it originates from all 3 of the body's embryonic germ layers. Whether we're talking about the ectoderm, the mesoderm, or the endoderm, epithelial tissue develops from every single one of them. And that universal origin story, that's exactly why it has the ability to line almost every delicate surface inside your body. Moving right along to section 2. Rules of construction and its universal characteristics. If we look closely at the notes, we can spot its defining physical traits. These cells are packed tightly together into continuous sheets. There is very little extra or intercellular substance floating around between them. They are tight, they are continuous, and they leave almost absolutely zero wasted space. But here's the kicker. These tight sheets aren't just dumb barriers. They are highly specialized for sensory reception. The notes specifically mention that epithelial cells handle sensory stimuli in the fluids of your tongue, the olfactory area of your nose, and incredibly, even the rods and cones of your retina. But you might be wondering, how do these continuous sheets actually stay in place? They can't just float there. The crucial point is that they rest on a very specific foundation. These cells are attached to what the notes refer to as the basement membrane. And this isn't just empty space, guys. It has a highly specific biochemical makeup composed of mucopolysaccharides, proteins, and collagen fibers. This complex membrane is the literal anchor that keeps your body's lining safely secured. And that brings us to one of the absolute most fascinating structural quirks of this whole tissue. Epithelial tissue is avascular. Now let's bust that jargon real quick. Avascular simply means it has absolutely no blood vessels of its own. None. Because of this, it has to rely entirely on the underlying connective tissue, the stuff just below that basement membrane, for its growth and survival. It is basically a masterclass in biological dependency. All right, section 3, the materials catalog. Let's take a look at the epithelium family tree. Because it lines so many wildly different parts of the body, epithelial tissue obviously isn't just one single, uniform thing. Right at the top of the handwritten notes, the author maps out this brilliant, high-level taxonomy, which gives us a really clear mental picture of the whole tissue family tree. It's basically divided into 3 main branches: simple epithelial tissue, compound epithelial tissue, and glandular epithelial tissue. Let's quickly walk through this structural map so we know where we're at. Simple tissue consists of subtypes like squamous, cuboidal, columnar, and ciliated. Then you have compound tissue, which is further divided into stratified layers and transitional types. And finally, glandular tissue, which handles all the body's secretions, is split into exocrine and endocrine categories. Now, having this broad landscape in mind is absolutely crucial, because for the rest of this explainer, we are going to zoom in exclusively on the incredibly elegant structures of those 4 types of simple epithelial tissue. Which brings us to section 4, floor tiles and blocks, specifically simple squamous and cuboidal tissues. Take a look at this drawing from the notes. This is our first type, which essentially acts as the body's floor tiles, simple squamous epithelium. Notice the shape here? These are flat, scale-like cells. And because they are so incredibly thin and flattened out, the nucleus just bulges right in the center of each cell. It's really quite delicate. The notes use a fantastic architectural metaphor for this one. Simple squamous is made up of a single layer of these flattened, irregular shapes that piece together perfectly, literally just like floor tiles. In fact, because they fit together so seamlessly to form this smooth lining, they're actually referred to as pavement epithelium. Now, why does it matter that they look like pavement? Well, the extreme thinness of these tiles perfectly dictates what they do. You're going to find them in the alveoli of the lungs and the lining of your blood vessels, because their flat shape allows for the rapid diffusion of oxygen and the super fast exchange of gases. They also line the kidneys to allow for rapid blood filtration, and they're in the digestive tract secreting lubricating substances. Basically, if your body needs something to pass through a barrier quickly, it uses the thinnest tile possible. Make sense, right? But what if the body needs something just a little bit sturdier than a flat, fragile tile? That's where it builds into simple cuboidal epithelium. Looking at this next diagram, you can immediately see the distinct shift. We've gone from flat, pavement-like tiles to these sturdy, cube-shaped blocks, still resting firmly on that same basement membrane. And this blockier, cube-like shape, it perfectly equips these cells for totally different jobs. You are not going to find these where fast gas exchange is needed. Instead, you find them in places like kidney tubules or the surface of the ovaries, where they handle complex secretion, excretion, and absorption. You'll also find them in the ducts of salivary glands, sweat glands, and the pancreas, where their sturdy cube structure provides vital mechanical support to the glandular walls. All right, our final stop is Section 5, Pillars and Sweepers. Let's look at columnar and ciliated tissues. So, let's examine our taller structures. Think about this. When you take a cuboidal cell and stretch it straight upward, it becomes simple columnar tissue. It literally transforms from a little block into a tall pillar-like cell. And because of this tall stretch, the nuclei aren't perfectly central anymore. They get pushed down towards the basement membrane. Plus, this taller structure allows for some really advanced modifications on the top surface, like microvilli. This robust, pillar-like structure means simple columnar tissue can handle much heavier-duty environments. You're going to find this tissue lining things like the stomach and the uterus, where it handles intense secretion and excretion. You also find it in the gallbladder and parts of the respiratory tract. In those harsh environments, that thick, pillar-like barrier provides essential protection and really powerful absorption capabilities. And that brings us to the final diagram from our notes, simple ciliated epithelium. This is arguably the absolute most specialized of the simple tissues. If you look closely at the top of the cells in this drawing, you can see these really unique structural additions, tiny hair-like sweeping structures called cilia. And interspersed right there among those tall pillar cells, you have these distinct rounded structures called goblet cells. Their specific job? To literally be little mucus factories. Now, the notes introduce a great, kind of intimidating term here, pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium, which is just another name for this ciliated tissue. Let's break that mouthful down, though. Pseudo means false, and stratified means multi-layered. So it's falsely multi-layered. Because the tall columnar cells are irregularly shaped, their nuclei are scattered all over the place at odd levels. Under a microscope, it tricks you into thinking there are multiple layers of cells, but as the notes clarify, it is actually just one single irregular layer attached to the basement membrane. The architecture here is entirely built for movement and protection. You're going to find this ciliated tissue in a few key places, most notably your upper respiratory tract. Those goblet cells produce mucus to trap dust and debris, and then the tiny hair-like cilia constantly perform this sweeping motion to just sweep that mucus substance right out of your airways. You'll also find them in the ventricles of the brain and in reproductive organs, providing specialized protection and secretion. So, we've gone all the way from the very origins of these tissues down to their exact microscopic shapes, from flat pavement tiles to tall sweeping pillars. The overwhelming takeaway from these notes is that in biology, form absolutely dictates function. Every single epithelial cell's specific shape perfectly matches its essential job. So I want to leave you with this thought. Knowing that millions of these tiny tiles, blocks, and pillars are constantly filtering, supporting, and sweeping inside you right at this very moment, how will understanding this literal microscopic architecture change the way you view your own body's intricate construction? Keep learning, keep exploring, and I'll catch you next time.